everyone. Welcome to another Fully Booked Chats. Today, joining our spotlight are two amazing Filipino authors, Eliza Victoria and Mervin Malonzo, together with their fellow author and our host, Vida Cruz. Together, we will talk about their books after Lambana and Wounded Little Gods, and delve into the world of magic and Philippine mythology. Eliza Victoria is the author of several books, including the Philippine National Book Award-winning Dwellers, Wounded Little Gods, and the science fiction novel in stories, Nightfall. Her short stories and poetry have appeared most recently in Lontar, the Journal of Southeast Asian Speculative Fiction, the Best Asian Speculative Fiction, the Dark Magazine, the Apex Book of World SF Volume 5, Fireside Fiction, and Future SF. Mervin Malonzo created the comic Tabi Po. It received a Philippine National Book Award in 2014 and was adapted to a TV miniseries in 2017. He collaborated with different authors, producing books about Philippine mythology, like The Lost Journal of Alejandro Pardo, Black Bestiary, an Alejandro Pardo Compendium, Alternative Alamat, and si Janus Silang at ang Labanang Manananggal Mambabarang among others. He produces animated commercials for work in his free time. He develops an animated series and film based on a comic called Ella Arcangel. Their fellow author and our today's host, Vida Cruz, is a Filipino fantasy and science fiction writer, editor, artist, tarot reader, and con runner. Her short fiction and essays have been published or are forthcoming from Fantasy Magazine, Strange Horizons, Oddcastle, Expanded Horizons, and various anthologies. She has been nominated, longlisted, and recommended for the Hugo Award, the British Science Fiction Award, and the James Tiptree Jr. Award. She was a 2018 Tiptree Fellow, and in 2019, she published her first fantasy short story collection, Beyond the Line of Trees. Currently, she's a freelance book editor with the Darling Acts and is co-director of Bonfire under the larger umbrella of Fiacon, a BIPOC-centered convention for science fiction and fantasy readers and writers. Everyone, let's give them all a warm welcome.
So congratulations to the both of you for having your work picked up by Toto. How did you receive the news when you first heard that your work was going to be internationally published? Where were you? What were you doing?
Okay. Mervin, baka gusto mo ikaw muna sumagot.
Okay. Sige. Parang ano to nag-email yata si Miss Nida or nag-message sa Facebook. Tapos, actually, feeling ko sabay tayo nun eh. Parang gumawa tayo ng group chat si Miss Nida. Si Miss Nida pala ay yung, kung sa mga hindi nakakilala, yung, ayaw ko kung ba't din yung pakilala, pero siya yung parang madam ng Biscuit natin. Tapos ngayon, meron siyang sarili niyang publishing Avenida. So, siya yung parang tumatayong agent namin ni Eliza. Tapos dahil marami kaming parang ganitong offers before, parang hindi kami masyadong parang medyo na parang ako kasi parang may mga ganitong mga sa mga ibang libro, pero parang okay, sige. Tingnan natin kung mapupush or hindi, pero parang hindi naman umaasa. So parang nung nandun na, parang nagulat kami na parang, totoo to? Ganun, okay.
Tapos biglang nandito na siya.
So parang ganun, oo. Sige nga. Totoo nga, nakahawakan na, amoy na yun. Ayun, so, ayun, nakagulat din siya, syempre. Yun.
Yeah. And
Ikaw, Eliza, ano na?
hindi ko maalala kung kailan siya exactly, but I remember just getting a message from Miss Nida asking, hindi naman my permission, but maybe just letting me know that she's going to send some titles to this publisher called Tatal nga, na based in the US. And at the time, I guess it was in the middle of lockdown noong 2020. And I was just like, I have so many things going on. I'm like, whatever, sige, just send it off. Wala namang mangyayari. Alam mo yan, like yung sinabi rin ni Mervin na, like we would get offers, like, we'll turn this title into a movie or a TV show, or we'll pitch whatever. Then nothing happened. So I'm just like, you know what? There's a global health crisis. Whatever, just send it over. And then, like I didn't think like Mervin na may patutunguhan siya. But then, and then it happened. It got picked. The two titles. Well, from my end, several titles got picked up. that are going to be published this year and released internationally. So I think when I first got the news na confirmed na, and then the contract started getting sent over email, I was like, so I guess mangyayari talaga.
Seryoso sila, no? Yeah.
Parang, totoo pala to. Yeah. So, but as to what I was doing exactly, I feel like for most of us, 2020 just melded together, like all of the months and the days. So I don't remember exactly what I was doing or where I was, but yeah. So it's a nice surprise, I guess.
Very good. Well deserved for both of you. So,
Thanks.
can you tell
Thank
us
you.
a brief and non-spoilery summary of what your books are all about? We can start with After Lambana and then Wounded Little Gods.
Okay, so I
Sige,
guess
akin na lang yung After Lambana, no? Since
sige,
ito yung
go.
sa akin, yung kasama ko. Sige, basahin ko ba? Hindi, joke lang. Yung After Lambana, tungkol siya sa isang uh, lalaki na mga medyo bata na parang nagsisik ng help sa kanyang ailment sa puso. Tapos yung cure dun sa ano na yun, sa disease na yun ay magic lang ang makakagaling. So, ayun, sa mundo na to, sa After Lambana, merong magic pero bawal. So, yun, naghahanap siya, ang paraan lang para makahanap is sa mga underground na uh, mga communities sa mga so parang siyang in a way parang siyang drugs parang ganun. So naghahanap siya ng ganun. So parang bawal, as in sobrang bawal, parang pinagbabawalan ng gobyerno gumamit ng magic. So ayun, paano niya ma-cure yung sarili yung sakit niya sa isang gabi na yun kasi malapit na siyang mamatay actually. So yun yung parang yung mismong dun tumatakbo yung story natin kung paano gagaling si Conrad. Tapos may na-meet siya na isang person na willing na mag-help sa sakit niya. So yun, doon tumatakbo. Tapos isang gabi lang nangyari po buong story.
Yes, A+ summary from Mervin. Okay.
Pag pinagbabenta ko ng libro, ganito ko binibenta.
Okay, so for Wounded
Mm.
Little Gods, Wounded Little Gods, the protagonist is a young woman named Regina. I guess maraming makaka-relate sa kanya. She splits her time between the province and the city. Lumaki siya sa probinsya, pero sa syudad siya nagtatrabaho. Tapos, in the city, may na-meet siya, a coworker. She had a weird encounter with a coworker who disappeared and then left behind a map. And it's a map of Regina's hometown. And on the map, it's marking a place that in her mind, because kasi hometown niya yun, so she knows what's there. It's marking a place that does not exist. So in order to find out what happened to her coworker or ano yung connection ng coworker na to sa hometown niya and sa kanya, she goes home and tries to investigate.
All right. Very good. Also A+ summary.
Yay!
Okay. So our next questions are going to be about the books, both of them. And then there will be specific questions for Eliza and then some the both of you can answer. So anyway, first, the lore of After Lambana and Wounded Little Gods is so rich and very much rooted in Philippine mythology. Lambana mentions black and white shadows, and Wounded Little Gods explores the idea of a place not found on any map, a place that chooses who it shows itself to. How much of your work is based on existing legends? And in contrast, how much of it was imagined?
Okay, I have to say, yung opening sequence ng After Lambana, if you start reading the comic, it is based on a story that my mother told me. My mother is from the Cagayan Valley, and lumaki ako sa household na maraming mga ganitong kwento-kwento ng sirena, ng manananggal, mga ganun. And it was inspired by that. Like, she would tell me na you would know if someone was killed by a sirena if they're found standing up in water. So that's how the story opened. And that actually started the comic book script when I started drafting it. So yes, but the rest of it, like when you think about, because I go into like yung social political hierarchy ng diwata, ganyan. That's all. That's just made up. um, in Wounded Little Gods naman, I mention or I include stories about the Tagalog pantheon, but the Tagalog pantheon is so distant from us now. Like we don't talk about them as if they're still around walking among us, that sort of thing. So what I know about them very surface level, minsan pangalan lang and um like what they do, that sort of thing. For example, Mapulon, God of Seasons, but that's all we know. Like we don't really have specific stories of them that are known by everyone, by non-experts, by non-anthropologists, for example. So the rest of it, I have to just fill in the lines, sort of, and just create fiction out of it. Yeah.
You, Mervin, with your comic book series.
Mm. Um, Ganun din, may mga kinukuha ako ng mga elements from Philippine mythology tsaka sa mga yung mga kinukwento sa atin ng mga lola natin. Pero hindi kadalasan gumagawa ako ng sarili kong lore. So yun, yung tawag nito, gumagawa ako ng kumbaga parang hindi ko siya tinuturing na Bible na dapat ganito lang yung rule, ganito lang yung ano. Kadalasan kasi wala din naman silang sinasabing origin story ng mga ano natin. Pero yun, ginagamit ko sila para tackle siguro yung mga ibang current issues ng mga nararanasan natin ngayon. Kunyari, kasi yung horror na, kasi di kadalasan yung mga features natin, di ba horror? So parang minsan nilalagyan ko ng mga horror na parang base sa real life na mga
Yes.
nangyayari sa society natin ngayon. So parang ganun ko siya ginagamit. Pero hindi ko siya parang, hindi ako tulad ng ibang author na parang pagka ganitong sinabing ganito dapat yung mga aswang, ganito lang dapat yung mga aswang, gano'n. So gumagawa akong mga sarili kong version ng mga aswang, sarili kong version ng mga manananggal, ganyan. So ano siya, hindi siya parang, basta mas parang flexible sa akin, mas parang material siya na bagay na pwede kong i-mold according sa story tsaka message na gusto kong gawin. So, ganun siya. Ganun. Saka,
Yeah.
feeling ko, in-encourage ko rin yung mga writers na ganun yung gawin. Kasi si Eliza din, ganito siya magsulat eh. Parang nilalagay niya sa modern setting, kunwari yung mga creatures na kadalasan dahil noong unang panahon pa sila sa mga trees, sa mga jungle din nanggaling. So ano siya, parang ganun, feeling ko dapat magawa ka talaga ng sarili mong twist sa mga bagay-bagay, sa mga ganitong legends para maging mas exciting. Saka mas may nadadagdag ka dun sa lore ng mga to na later on parang isipin nila na baka ganito nga talaga ganun. So yun yung gusto kong part ng paggawa ng story actually.
Yeah.
And
I
the
agree.
fact na, oh sorry, can I add?
No, just go.
Go.
Yeah. No, just the fact that most of our mythology isn't really known. Like a lot of it has been lost. A lot of yung mga kwento natin. Not like, I mean, I think the average Filipino would know more about Greek mythology and Roman. I mean, you know, yung mythology of the West rather than our own. It is necessary to extrapolate and to fill in the gaps, and that's where you find, you know, good stories. Anyway, when you start, like yung ginagawa ni
Yes.
Mervin na you just think about, you innovate. Yeah.
That's true. I agree. That's actually how stories survive when they're
Yeah.
retold constantly.
Exactly.
So anyway, so our next question. After Lambana and Wounded Little Gods exist in these fictional worlds that are very similar to what we know. Both have surreal doppelganger versions of Manila that border on magical realism. Was it a conscious decision to have these stories originate in the urban metropolis? Why was this the starting point?
Okay. I think it's just also from my own experience. When I was describing yung summary ng Wounded Little Gods, I was describing Regina as a young woman who splits her time between the province and the city, and that's my situation and the situation of so many Filipinos. dahil unfortunately wala sa probinsya, wala pang masyadong infrastructure and job creation in the province. It's still very much wanting, so maraming mga pumupunta sa syudad para mag-aral tapos doon na rin magtrabaho. So I grew up in the province, but majority of my life spent in urban areas. So I think that's where the stories originate. But what I um I think what I figure out in my when I write books or stories, for example, I switch them up. Like, for example, if I write a novel that's mostly set in the city, I want my next one to be mostly set in the province. Parang minsan nami-miss ko, alam mo yun. So, parang pinagsasalit-salit ko sila or i-merge ko ganyan. Yeah, so I'm trying to write another novel that's going to be mostly set in the province. So, yeah.
Merv, do you have any insights or something to add?
Since nabanggit ni Eliza pagsusulat na, I mean, pag nasulat siya about sa province, biglang masusulat siya sa city. Parang ganun din kaya ko dinanggap din yung After Lambana kasi yung tabi po, yung novel before, yung ginawa ko before, yung graphic novel na ginawa ko before this. Puro puno kasi siya, tsaka yung setting niya, 19th century Philippines. So parang mga probinsya din yung itsura at saka mga halaman. Tapos gusto ko talagang gumawa ng mga city naman na setting. Kaya talagang tinanggap ko talaga to kasi parang swak na swak. Parang ibang-iba dun sa napakita ko before sa previous graphic novel na ginawa ko. So, ayun. Parang siya, exciting din sa akin as an artist na mag-switch sa mga ganito. Tapos yung ginawa ko rin dito sa After Lambana, gumawa ko ng parang sarili yung color palette. Ganyan. So, yun. Kasama din yun sa mga decision na ginawa ko dito. Tapos, yun nga, parang exciting kasi iba yung texture ng city sa gubat. So, yun, masaya siyang i-switch, magpalit-palit sa ganung settings.
Yeah, and I think as an artist and a creator, you want to always challenge yourself. Kaya siguro gusto natin yung paiba-iba.
Yes, oo.
And nagsashine through
Although rough
naman
pa rin
that
yung drawing
you
ko
two had
dito.
fun. Nagsashine through naman na you two had fun with yung challenges of these two books. Anyway, what kinds of media and literature influence the magical aspects of these two books? Yes, two works. Is there anything you watched, read, or listened to that helped you build these worlds?
You know what? This question always stumps me because I can't remember. I don't think I can pinpoint one work really that influenced it. Yung Wooded Little God says at the end I have an author's note listing some of the books or articles that inspired me, but they're mostly nonfiction books. I think it's just mostly my imagination. I guess, yeah. I'm sorry. This works have been written like a long time ago, so I can't really remember.
Tagal na, no?
Oo, diba? I think one author that people keep mentioning when they talk to me about Wounded Little Gods, for example, is Neil Gaiman. I'm a fan of Neil Gaiman's Sandman series. So he does use, gods from various cultures and puts them in modern settings, that sort of thing. But no one has done that kind of, or at least for me, it's new for me to do that kind of treatment for a pantheon that no one really remembers anymore. So I guess, yeah.
Come, Mervin.
Yung tour specifically dito or siguro sa sa art na lang siguro part na
Yes, yung art.
From an art perspective is good.
sa After Lambana. Kasi si Eliza talaga nagsulat nitong dalawang to yung story na to. Ano ba? Siguro yung sagutin ko lang sa part na kung paano ko siya, kung ano yung influence nung sa art.
Yeah. Sure.
Siguro may nabasa kasi ako sa na kung paano ginawa yung colors ng comics na Watchmen. Tapos parang yung artist kasi pinili siya ng color na hindi ginagamit usually sa mga comics kasi kadalasan primary colors yung ginagamit dun sa mga comics, red, yellow, tsaka blue. Ang ginamit niya yung mga secondary colors, mga orange, mga violet, mga purple, ganyan, tsaka yung mga masasakit sa mata. So, yun yung ginawa niya dun Dave Gibbons pa yung pangalan niya, sa Watchmen. So, parang ganun so naisip ko na parang gumawa din ako ng parang ganung experiment dito sa After Lambana dahil nga parang magical na world siya. So, kailangan medyo iba yung kulay ng langit, iba yung kulay na. So, again, gumawa ako ng yun yung naging influence ko siguro para din magkaroon ng parang visual language na sarili itong After Lambana. So, parang yun, kumbaga kung may influence dun sa art, siguro indirectly parang yung thinking na paggagawa ng sariling color palette, parang yun siguro yung naging influence.
Ang hirap ng tanong na to, no? Kasi it's not like, as a writer and as an artist, for example, you don't sit down and say, oh, itong work na to.
Oo.
Yeah. Oh, so a lot of
ang
it...
sabi nga si George R. R. Martin sabi niya ang tawag ito, pag kumuha ka ng isang influence, isang source, pag nanakaw yun. Pero pagka marami kang search, marami kang kinuha na sources, tawag doon research. So, hindi lang siya iisa, hindi ko wala kang masasabing iisang influence. Kasi ganoon naman talaga dapat. Influence tayo ng yung maraming iba-ibang bagay, hindi lang ang literature, may mga movies, may mga bukod sa comics, may mga libro din, ganyan. So, may mga music, kahit paano music din makakasama. So, parang feeling ko, siya, parang amalgamation talaga siya ng lahat ng mga na-absorb ng mga bagay-bagay.
Okay.
Ay, may sinasabi ka, Eliza, sorry na-interrupt kita.
Hindi. Tama naman. Yun lang din yung sabihin ko na parang it's not just, it's not just artistic works, news articles, sariling experience. Yeah, halo-halo na. And sometimes it's not even conscious, really. So, it's just really hard to tell. Yeah.
And it has been a while since the both of you created these, so
yeah.
Yeah. Although Mervin, I do want to ask, sorry, I'm going off script here. What was the decision to use a sketchy sort of art style for After Lambana?
Ang inspiration po yun ay katamaran. Joke lang. Kadalasan kasi yung mga hindi kasi pag nagbabasa ka ng comics, makikita mo usually mga malilinis na ink, malilinis na kadalasan yung mga black and white ink, sobrang linis, sobrang ganda. Parang kahit before this yung sa tabi po, nag-decide ako na gusto kong style talaga before na parang medyo parang yun yung house style ko. Kaya kung gumawa ng iba-ibang style depende talaga sa concept ng story. Siyempre dapat siya na parang nagjo-jive yung story tsaka yung art style. Pero ang parang pinili ko talaga na parang medyo default na style ko yung medyo sketchy kasi gusto kong parang mag-stand out sa mga iba na sobrang linis, sobrang tawag dito, sobrang polished ng works. Pwede naman kasing parang hindi din kasi realism talaga na todo hyper realism yung natin, yung gusto natin ipakita. Gusto ko parang may magical aspect, may pagka parang yun nga, parang ma-appreciate mo din yung art as art kasi pag realistic parang photo na di ba? Parang ano Eliza?
Parang dreamlike, may dreamlike quality siya.
Yes.
Yun, oo. So siya parang tawag yun. Tsaka parang feeling ko, ewan ko kung bakit, pero parang mas may buhay sa akin yung mga sketchy lines. Mas nararamdaman mo yung kamay ng artist kapag may konting hindi konting, parang madami. Kumaga parang maramdaman mo yung expression pagka may pagka lines, pagkulay. So parang mas, in a way, mas, para sa akin, mas buhay siya kaysa sa sobrang walang lampas-lampas na mga colors. Ganun. Although
That makes
appreciate ko din
sense.
naman yung mga ganung kasing artwork kasi sobrang patient yung kailangan doon. Pero yun, ito yung pinili ko talaga style kasi na-enjoy ko siyang gawin ng mabilis. Parang naramdamin ko yung eksena, tapos mabilis ko siyang magagawa, tapos natatapos agad. So, yun yung fun part din kasi na parang ano lang, idadali mo lang yung sarili mo dun sa world habang nag-draw. Yun.
And I would say na bagay yung art style sa story ng After Lambana kasi in a way all the characters are kind of stuck in some kind of purgatory of
Yeah.
after a war and wala silang future. So
Yeah.
dreamy kind of a little bit like a pandemic but not quite.
Yeah.
Oo nga, no? Oo, bagay na bagay nga.
Hmm. Okay.
Maging
So,
red na rin yung sky natin soon.
oh no.
Pero gusto ko lang idagdag. I don't know, Mervin, kung connected to, but I think yung effect din ng using technology when you do your artwork. I'm not sure if you started with parang on paper like watercolor and then you transition to
Yes,
digital.
on paper itong After Lambana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So kita talaga
So,
yung
yun.
mga sketches
Yeah.
ni Mervin.
Well, yung color pala nito ay digital, pero yung tawag dito. Ay, halo pala, trinay ko pala na halo. Parang minsan may mga watercolor paintings talaga. Pero nung bandang dulo na parang mas madali pala yung
Digital.
iPad na Procreate niya. So,
Cool.
Naalala ko eh. Nabanggit ko lang
parang
kasi naalala ko from our discussions sa email noon.
parang wow, okay na pala, pwede na pala dito. So, yun. Okay din kasi parang pwede i-emulate ng digital yung traditional. So, ayun, medyo madali din yung buhay. Although, gusto ko rin, meron pa rin charm pa din talaga yung actual paper
Yung traditional.
tsaka paint. Oo, hirap pa rin siyang i-em. Parang ang nangyayari kasi pagka digital, nagdadagdag ka pa ng effort para magmukha siyang traditional. Pag traditional, ayan, wala kang gagawin. Scan mo na lang. Oo. Ayun.
Okay. So, our next question. Based on the research that you did for these two fictional works, did you come upon any insight that informed how you approach the story? Kumbaga parang may nakita ba kayong info somewhere that changed the direction of the story?
I guess one instance that came to mind when I was writing Wounded Little Gods, because the inspiration really is, it starts from eugenics. Like I read a news article about, we know about it. We've read all of the books and, the Nazi occupation and all the human experimentation and all that. But I always want to return it to the Filipino experience. So I was thinking, may connection ba tayo dito? And then I found out about yung nangyari sa Bilibid, yung may mga inmates who were inoculated with, I think, cholera. Again, in the book, in the author's notes, I list all of the sources. So I didn't know that before I started researching about it. And it's horrifying. And then it's another thing that's horrifying is it's just swept under the rug. I don't think it's well known among us. Like when you think about human experimentation, you don't think Bilibid na nangyari nung panahon ng when we were, under American occupation. So that changed the course. I found the Filipino connection. It's a horrible connection. Yeah.
Fair. Okay. Well, I think that segues into our next question for you, Eliza.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to focus on eugenics and human experimentation? Is this something you're personally fascinated about?
I'm not sure if fascinated is the right word for it, but it is horrifying. And I think I'll echo what one of the characters says in the books na sometimes you read about this and you think this can't have happened. Like seriously, like someone just made it up, but they all happened, And I think that's where the quote unquote fascination comes from, that we can be this evil and do this to each other. And I guess writing about it, at its heart, really is the question of who who do you think is worthy of being called a human being? Who do you think is worthy of a dignified life and a dignified death? And it really connects to our own painful, violent history in the Philippines and the history that's unfolding right now. Yeah, so I think that's why it's always been, a sort of philosophical question that comes up over and over when I write my stories. Yeah.
Mervin, did you, when you read the script for After Lambana, and I'm not sure if you've read Wounded Little Gods, but how do you, this is a really silly question to ask, but how do you feel about eugenics and human experimentation?
But I guess more, yeah, more
Masaya
like
yan.
yung
Oo. Parang mahilig ako sa mga
mm,
monsters eh. So, sarap mag-combine ng mga DNA ng mga bagay-bagay para mag-create ng mga bagong creatures. So, kung kaya ko lang, gagawa ko ng mga bagong creatures talaga. Pero sa ngayon, drawing muna. Ganun essentially ginagawa namin. Gumagawa kami ng sarili namin mga monsters sa mga libro namin. So, in a way, mga geneticists kami ng mga ng mga tao. May kasamang mga magic. Yan. So, yun. Ganun tayo mga writers siguro. Parang gawa-gawa tayo sa sarili. So, fascinating siya na part. Pero syempre sa totoong buhay, syempre, hindi siya pwedeng gawin. I mean, ano siya, parang hindi siya ethical. Pero, ayun, pero fun. Pero parang, pagka sa world ng imagination, masaya is mag-isip ng mga ganitong bagay. Yun. So, yun yung aking take sa eugenics.
Okay. So, Elisa, a really striking theme in Wounded Little Gods is the duality between godhood and being mortal. And the notable difference in being mortal is the concept of being left wanting for basic necessities and for something more. So, in this world of your novel, why do you think gods envy mortality? What do you think gods envy about mortality?
I think, well, gods would envy having a definite ending, I guess. You know what they always say, that knowing that something will end makes whatever it is sweeter and more precious. Um, so I think, um, I mean, whether or not you believe in an afterlife, one particular moment in your life can only really be experienced once. So I guess um, that makes every moment special, and I think that's what gods envy about mortality.
Mm, okay, good one. Okay, so going back to After Lambana, in the beginning of the book, the protagonist is infected by a kind of incurable disease. There is a sense of precarity and fear in this world that feels relevant to the events of the last 2 years. How did it feel to revisit this graphic novel in 2020?
It's really interesting how whenever whenever people want to discuss after Lambana, they focus on the disease. But in my mind, it's really more yung systemic disorder. Like, yes, it is about the disease, but at the same time, it's really more how systems fail us. Um, and the greed of politicians, the greed of human beings, that sort of thing. So, when I reread After Lambana in the age of the pandemic, that's what strikes me personally,
So, parang
really.
pandemic
That
nga.
Yeah.
I guess, Pero in the end, parang
Same na same
yung,
pa din.
yun na nga, kasi this was written, I mean, this was published 2015,
2017,
maybe,
2016, 2014,
2016, let's
15,
say, and
15
then
yan.
maybe written years before that. And whatever problems the Philippines face, whatever systemic problems the Philippines face from that year and up to now, ganun pa din. Pandemic or no. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's, yeah. So that's how it feels to me. Na parang, it feels like it's stuck in amber. Like I remember, like, reading it. I remember who I was when I wrote it, but it also feels like I could have just written it yesterday, sort of thing. Yeah.
Ikaw, Mervin. Kamusta?
Um, Parang, yun nga, same lang din. Parang, actually maraming, hindi lang sa itong After Lambana, maraming mga parang fiction or mga series na parang akala ko sa mga books lang mababasa or sa mga movies ko lang, sa mga series ko lang mapapanood. Pero parang, okay, parang familiar na tayo sa word na virus. I mean, alam na natin kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng pandemic. Kasi alam ko, epidemic lang before. Ganun. So parang may particular na dito sa UK, parang ganoon parang pakalat sila ng virus. So parang sobrang para sa akin sobrang alien siya ng concept dati yung parang magkakaroon ng virus mag-take over sa world ganun. Pero yun posible pa lang mangyari. So parang yung mga fiction nagiging nagiging reality ng konti. So parang ganoon yung feeling ko nung since nagka-pandemic parang pati yung pagtrato ng mga politician natin na parang mga clown. So parang ang weird Parang pwede ko talaga meron tayong parang writer na nagsusulat ng world natin na medyo parang hindi masyadong
Six sense of
creative,
humor.
parang Oo, parang ano to parang pati yung mga villains mukha talaga mga villains ganun. So parang hindi man lang gawing mukhang
Walang subtlety yan, no, Mervin?
parang ganun parang ayusin mo naman yung pagsusulat. Masyadong obvious yung mga kalaban.
That's true.
Yun yung yun yung feeling ko dati. I mean simula na nag-pandemic tsaka nung gano'n. So parang nagpunta tayo sa world parang sa ganun nag-change yung world view ko na parang yung mga may mga evil talaga na sa mundo pala talaga na dapat puksain mga ganun. So
Okay. So, after Lambana ends on a sort of cliffhanger, and should we expect a sequel? And actually, Eliza, sorry.
That's okay.
I read your story in Daily Science Fiction, Fairy Tales, which seems to have been a precursor to After Lambana, and you should all go check it out. It's free to read online,
Yeah.
and it showed so much more of this world in After Lambana. So, will there be a sequel or a prequel?
Fairy Tales will be included in my second short story collection, which is coming out this year. And I made the creative decision to tweak it slightly to make it like a sequel. To make it, like go after the events of After Lambana. Para lang isa siyang universe. So,
Oo nga.
yeah, so it would have more details. But for me, and I've told Mervin this as well, kasi lagi rin siya nakakakuha ng ganitong tanong. For me, tapos na yung story. Like, that's it. And if people want to imagine what happens after, feel free. Yeah, but in my mind, it's the story's finished.
So that means magsulat kayo ng fanfic kasi Elisa is okay with it.
Oh, I would love. Yes, I would enjoy that after Lambana.
Mm. And so, but for the two of you, are you two working on any other collaborations together, or would you have any in the future?
Yeah, so
paano mo
merong
nalaman?
very
I'm psychic.
very early stages of a collaboration. May mga napakita na akong pahina kay Mervin, pero sobrang bagal ng writing process at the moment. Ang dami kasing nangyayari. So,
Yeah.
Adulting.
Adulting and
Kailangan kumayot, kailangan kumain, mga ganun.
tsaka plague and war, the
Yeah.
usual.
So, small stuff like that. So, so hopefully matuloy ko yung pagsusulat. Kasi ang gusto ko, when I send it to the artist, buo na siya. And the way I write din kasi, and I've told Mervin this as well. Like, I know some authors, they can do like installments, but for me, I usually like I write it in one go and then go back and then edit and then go back. So gusto ko buo na siya yung script, and then Mervin can start working on the art. So yeah.
Yes.
May plano pero matatagal.
Yung After Lambana, ganun yung sinunod eh.
Yeah, buo
Yung
na
After
siya.
Lambana, ganun sinunod ni Eliza, talagang buong script. Tapos parang, hala, ang dami kong babasahin. Tapos ano siya, parang yung script niya parang anong tawag doon?
Film script.
Sa pelikula.
Film
Ayun, film script.
Okay.
So, ganun yung pagkakagawa niya.
Oo, meron siyang
ayun.
may camera angles, saka parang naka-indicate yung page number, panel 1, panel 2.
So, grabe, no? Ayun, so, ganun siya.
So, at least organized.
So, bahala ka na dyan. Parang ganun. At least.
At least organized.
Yun. Pero kahit na ganun, open pa rin si Eliza sa parang sarili kong interpretation, sarili kong pag-arrange ng story. Pag meron akong tingin ko parang much better na angulo, ganun. Open naman siya. So, hindi naman siya parang collaborative pa rin siya sa ganung aspect. Hindi lang siya parang gawin mo to, parang assignment, gano'n. Hindi. Parang ano siya. Enjoyable naman siyang gawin dahil meron ngang ganung aspect. Ayun. So, anyway, yun nga. Essentially, may spiritual sequel pa rin na mangyayari. Kahit na hindi siya talaga After Lambana. So, ayun, abangan nyo. Tsaka, try namin, kasi siyempre, mas mature na kami na writer tsaka artist ngayon. So definitely, mas maganda yung lalabas dun sa collab namin. So, magte-take kami ng time para maging mas maayos. So,
kailangan ko ng oras.
Sana buhay pa tayo.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's just ha-ha-hoo-hoo. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so our next questions are on the creative process. And medyo nasagot yan na yung yung ibang tanong dito. But that's fine. So, Eliza, for example, how different is writing a graphic novel from a novel?
So when you write a novel, whatever appears on the page appears to the reader. And when I started writing the the script for the comic book, I forget sometimes. Like, for example, there would be descriptions that only Mervin will see. Pero in my mind, parang, basa to ng reader. Kailangan maganda pa din. Pero, like, halfway through the script, I'm like, hindi naman nila to makikita. Mas important yung... So, in the graphic novel, everything has to be externalized. So, conflict... there are ways to show inner conflict naman visually. But for the action of After Lambana, which happens in just one night, everything has to be at least externalized, dramatized, which is something new for me. So when I was writing, for example, descriptions, parang nilalagyan ko pa ng craft. Ganyan. But then, and then in the end, I realized hindi siya mababasa ng reader. Hindi niya makikita yun. Ang kailangang umangat yung art ni Mervin. And the dialogue and the pacing and all that. So so that's one adjustment. And then another interesting thing for me is when writing a comic book script and then thinking about a character in like a 3-dimensional space. You can play with background or things that are hiding in the background, sort of thing. But when you write that in a novel, parang mas nagkaka-spotlight yung whatever you're trying to hide, sort of. So that's one thing that I found different and enjoyable. And then also, when I write a novel, it's just me. But with the comic book script, nandun yung parang happiness and lightness of collaboration. Because na like, hindi ako nag-iisa. Like if I'm trying to describe a scene, I know that nandyan yung talent and expertise ni Mervin to make it even better. So, yeah.
Kaya pinapahirapan may mga meme ako nakita ng mga parang writers na parang drawing ka ng crowd scene. Oh,
Oo.
Parang ang daling isulat. Tapos bilang, okay.
Oh,
Yung artist pa.
that's true. Totoo yan, actually.
Yeah.
Parang
Yun.
description mo lang, buildings. Pakala mo,
Buildings,
dali
ayan.
lang, no?
Buildings, ganun.
Ayan,
Buti na
go.
lang, yung drawing ko rough lang. So, so yan.
Ayun nga.
Impressionistic, Mervin.
Impressionist. Okay.
That's a better
Tama,
word
tama.
than sketchy, which is what I used earlier. Sorry.
Hindi, okay lang. Actually, gusto ko yun naman talaga siya eh. So, okay lang naman siya.
Yeah.
Parang feeling ko kasi masyado tayong gusto nating polish lahat eh. Parang pwede namang pagka may impression ng building na yan. Babasahin naman ng mga kasi ganun yung parang pagbabasa ng comics eh. Parang ano siya parang yung mind mo yung magbubuo or pagtingin sa art, parang bubuuin naman yung mind mo kahit na akala mo kahit na hindi siya mukhang kumpleto, bubuuin siya. So parang hindi mo kailangang kumpletuhin kasi may camera naman para magpicture ng mga realistic na bagay. So yung gusto ko sa art, yung impression, yung impression tsaka expression, tsaka emotion ng mga bagay-bagay. Yun yung kailangan umangat kaysa dun sa realism na makita. Kasi yun nga. Ba't ka pa magdo-drawing kung pwede mong picture?
So yeah, so in a way parang in that sense nagiging collaborator mo din yung whoever's viewing the art.
Yes, ganun din yung maganda sa comics din kasi parang may sariling interpretation din yung mga bawat isang reader dun sa mga books. Pero yun, kailangan din may communication. Kailangan din malinaw yung nangyayari sa story. So yun yung maganda dun sa yun yung challenge din sa paggawa ng comic ng comics kasi nga parang nagko-communicate ka ng story through images tsaka text eh. So yun, so pag kailangan mong babalansehin, pagsayawin yung mga text tsaka images, so yun yung fun kasi pwede mong gawin na ngayon kasi dati yung old school parang pag may naglalakad na person nasa captions taas naglalakad siya gano'n. Ngayon pwede mo nang gawin na papunta siya sa isang malungkot na na pandemic na lugar ganun. Ayun. So parang mag-iiba siya. Nagkakaroon ng ibang story kahit na same image. So ganun masaya siya na masaya mag-comics. Mag-comics kayo lahat. Gumawa pa kayo ng maraming comics. Yun.
Which makes me wonder, Eliza, when you gave the script, did you already have the descriptions of each character or si Mervin na bahala doon?
Actually,
Ay, meron yan.
Sabi ko lang, kailangan gwapo.
Yun. Tama.
Pero
Yun.
Yung sa mismong script, parang ayoko kasing ito yung difference with the novel din. Kasi in the novel, you need to paint everything in words. But if you have a collaborator who's going to have his own interpretation din, kailangan medyo maluwag yung writer. So, ang description ko lang, the way also, because I also wrote one-act plays, yung hindi masyadong granular yung description. So, very like, man in his 30s, yung ganun lang. Tapos ito yung suot niya, this is how he acts, and yeah, ganun.
May description din si Eliza ng hairstyle.
Yung mga ganun lang, pero hindi masyadong
characters, yung dalawa, yung main characters. So parang yun, ginugal ko na.
And idadagdag ko lang din when like I would add like image pegs, di ba Mervin, like mga links usually. Parang ganito. Ganun. So, yeah. Pero hindi naman ibig sabihin na parang eto yung gusto kong makita. Parang ano lang yung kliyente sa advertising.
Basta kailangan gwapo, kailangan mo kang model, ganun yun. Ganun yung tsura. Parang pleasing to hangin. Kasi gagawa ka ng characters, syempre. Kailangan kailangan gwapo yung description. Pero kasi yung original kong ginawa kay Conrad, kasi 'di ba parang dapat may sakit siya. Parang ginawa ko talaga yung parang unkempt na hair. Parang medyo ganito. So parang medyo unkempt na hair, ganun. So parang gusto ni Eliza para talagang trimmed na mukha. Ayan.
So paano 'yon kung yung gwapo? Paano 'yun kung yung gwapo kay Eliza, hindi gwapo kay Mervin and vice versa?
Ewan ko, parang nahanap naman namin yung timpla, di ba?
Oo. Ganun. Okay naman. May pwede naman mag-send ng pictures for references. So, ganun yung ginawa namin. Ganun. Tapos yun nga, ayun. yun nga, nag-search lang ako. Madali na Google, guwapo.
Mm.
So, yun yung
Oh my God.
kinopya ko, ganun. So, yun. Tapos iba yung lumabas.
Oh no. You know, at least I did notice in your work now you do tend to just not to describe people in a very granular way. So I think on some level you are used to collaborating with other people because you also write plays. So may collaboration din done. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty cool actually. Okay, so what was the most difficult process of creating the graphic novel for the both of you, and what's the one that you enjoyed the most?
Okay, medyo na parang nabanggit na rin namin earlier.
All right.
So we enjoyed yung process of yung back and forth of like showing yung work in progress and commenting on I don't know, sa totoo lang, wala naman ako masyadong quote-unquote notes sa art kasi I'm a fan of Mervin as well. So I know na kung ano yung lalabas, maganda na yun. I think nagkaroon lang kami ng yung medyo mahabang diskusyon in presenting a symbol for if you remember Mervin. Presenting
Yes.
ayun namin ng spoiler, but anyway, there's a certain symbol kasi that Mervin wanted to use na widely used at the time in the Philippines. And in my mind, I wanted it to be, I mean, the story is political. I mean, you can't divorce it from what's happening now. But I didn't want it to be in your face, sort of. Yeah,
Okay.
and it is happening in a Manila that is, you know, a sort of alternate Manila. So I wanted it, baka kasi parang ma-off yung reader. Yun lang yung comment ko noon. Pero it's not like a long argument naman or anything like that. It's really it's a very civil discussion.
So let's talk a little about creature design. So Mervin, paano mo naisip yung imagery ng creatures in After Lambana?
Yung mga design naman ni Eliza dito ay may description din siya na specific dun sa mga sa mga creatures niya. Pero yung kunyari yung Serena, parang medyo hindi naman yata masyadong iba yung description ni Eliza dun sa mga Serena. So parang hindi naman siya sobrang iba. Pero ayun, ang ginawa ko siguro parang sobrang ginawa kong mukhang sobrang haba yata nung ginawa kong dun na buntot na parang mukhang hindi siya mukhang parang natural lang. So yung mga ganun lang ng details yung mga ginagawa kong kasi kadalasan ayun parang pinakaayaw ko pala sa mga nagdo-drawing ng Serena. Parang nakasuot ron, tao pa din, parang may nakasuot siya ng suit na sack. No? So parang ayoko nung ganun. Gusto ko talagang itanggalin sa pagiging human yung proportion niya. So ganun yung idea. Kasi ibang creature talaga siya. So ganun yung thinking ko sa mga creature dito. Tapos yung mga creatures na hindi ko alam kung invention ni Eliza talaga yung mga shadow. Tama ba?
Invention lang yun.
Ayun. So yun, ang ganda. Yun yung gusto ko sa creatures ni Eliza. Ang ganda ng concept niya doon. Ayoko na siguro sabihin kasi ayaw ni Eliza ng spoilers. Pero pero yung dalawang shadows, gusto ko yung invention na yun. Tapos ano pa ba yung mga creature na nandito? Mga diwata. Yun. Yung sa diwata naman, yung paggawa ko sa mga pakpak nila instead na parang insect na wings, parang ginawa ko parang mga lights lang na parang mga dots na so parang mukhang mas whimsical, mas magical yung itsura. Tapos may mga creatures dun sa world ng Lambana kasi yung Lambana ay parang world talaga siya ng mga fairies, di ba? So yung ginawa ko parang hindi sila din yung damit nila parang hindi damit na pang tao, parang hindi damit na parang yung fashion nila parang outrageous na parang iba-iba. Hindi ko alam kung nasa description din yata ni Eliza mismo yung ganun. Pero parang ginawa ko na parang ganun. Tapos medyo may mga nilagyan ko din ng parang hindi hindi mukhang exactly lalaki at babae,
Oo.
yung mga itsura nila, parang medyo anong tawag doon, androgynous
Androgynous.
yung look nila. Oo. So ganun yung iniisip ko kasi parang yun nga, parang mas flexible dapat yung mga bagay-bagay. So yun. Tsaka parang mas rainbow yung itsura ng mga tao dun
Oo.
sa world na yun. So masaya siya. Um,
Yeah.
Ayun, basta gano'n, nag-enjoy ako lagi kong ine-enjoy yung pag nagkikreate ako ng mga bagong mga monsters. Kasi nga, eugenics nga, di ba? So, yun.
Okay. Ha. Okay. So, so these two works have been republished internationally, and how does it feel to be picked up by an international press? And bonus question: are either of you worried about how this will translate to a foreign audience?
Well, I guess how it feels, it is exciting, but at the same time, may kasama ding anxiety in a way kasi I'm not sure how people are going to react to it. I've been happy writing for a Filipino audience in a market that's quite small. And I guess at this point, I'm just thinking I don't really care. But yeah, siguro ayaw ko lang yung na-exoticize siya masyado na parang
Yeah.
like it will be held up and say, eto yung Filipino culture, and I'm like, it's just one story, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yung, tapos, feeling ko, okay naman, feeling ko magkakaroon ng, kasi di ba nagkaroon ng 13 animation din, anime. So parang, feeling ko parang may
Definitely.
unti-unting introduction na rin ng Philippine mythology sa international space. So, ayan, maganda naman na magkaroon ng ganitong isa pang author na ano na iba naman yung interpretation niya sa Philippine mythology. So, ayun, makikita nila. Feeling ko okay naman. Feeling ko magiging okay naman yung pagtanggap nila dito sa kwento ni Eliza. So, sabi nga ni Eliza kanina, parang may yung reaction ng mga tao, parang Neil Gaiman, yung tingin nila sa pinakamalapit na pwedeng ano. Ayoko ng mga ganitong description na
Actually,
parang Neil
ako
Gaiman
din
sa
eh.
Philippines. Pinakaayaw ko. Pero kumbaga parang kung gusto mo nang magbigay ng parang para maintindihan ng mga tao, yun yung parang sinasabi nila palagi. So feeling ko okay siya. Okay na magiging pagtanggap ng mga tao dito. Kung hindi man, di okay. Okay lang, parang wala. I mean, parang kasi kami gumagawa kami ng story para sa sarili din namin eh. So parang essentially pag na-enjoy ng iba, bonus na lang talaga siya. Pero pag happy kami sa sarili namin gawa, yun tapos na kami dun sa ano na yun. Pero yun, kadalasan naman kasabi nga ni Eliza, ang dami nagtatanong ng sequel. So feeling ko baka ganun din yung reaction ng mga tao. Sana.
Oo.
So
Yeah.
ayun, enjoy kayo feeling ko.
And sa
Yay.
akin lang din, I'm just happy to be able to in a way to have the titles diversify whatever Filipino stories are out there. Kasi alam mo yun, yung the danger of the one story.
Yeah.
It's just it'd be good to have other titles that Filipinos all over the world can, read and connect with. Yeah.
That's true. Okay. So last question, and magandang question ito. What is your dream for the local indie publishing scene and for the writers and artists in this ecosystem?
Nandiyan naman lagi yung dream na magkaroon pa tayo ng mas malaking support from not just from individual consumers, but the government, I guess, the industry in a way. Because at the moment, all of the artists in the Philippines, or let's say almost all, are juggling so many things. Like they're juggling day jobs, they're juggling side gigs. Kaya walang time really to create. And personally, that's my dream to be able to do this full time. And I hope I hope other writers and artists can do the same. Yeah.
Ayun. Sa akin din, same lang din, pero ang hirap kasi ngayon dahil nga parang medyo pandemic pa, tapos kasi ang sa indie publishing, katulad ako kasi meron kaming nagpo-produce ako ng sariling books din. So ginagawa namin kasi usually sa mga events namin ginagawa, binebenta. So mahirap siyang gawin ngayon dahil sa tawag dito, sa pandemic nga, wala nang mga events ganun. Pero may online selling naman. So nag-evolve, lumalaban pa din at gumagawa pa rin yung mga comics, hindi lang sa comics, pati yung mga books na mga prose niyan. So ano pa rin, nag-exist pa rin lang sila. So yung mga readers, pwede nyo siguro ma-search lang kahit sa Facebook yung mga gusto niyo basahin na local na ng mga books. Nag-exist sila ngayon. So kailangan lang talaga hanapin ganun. Yun, ang dream ko lang talaga parang mas magkaroon pa ng maraming mga books na mababasa ng iba-ibang mga topics din na pwedeng basahin. So tapos yun, gusto ko din na mas magkaroon pa ng sobrang magandang mga kwento na hindi ko pa nababasa na gusto kong mabasa na local. So yun talaga bilang naman din ako writer, parang gusto ko rin talaga na magbasa ng mga local kasi doon ako natutuwa na pag nakakabasa ko ng parang bago to, bagong take talaga. So yun, gusto kong makahanap ulit ng something na pwede akong malunod sa kwento na yun. So ayun.
That's good. So it's time for our fast talk portion. Would you rather, for the both of you, would you rather be trapped in a eugenics research center in another dimension or be caught in an anti-Diwata raid while you have a magical object in your possession?
Iniisip ko when I saw this, I'm the kind of person that you can like tell a secret to, and I'm the best person to tell it to because I will forget it. I will just forget that you told me something. And I think if I am carrying something like a magical object in a place that's not supposed to have any magic in it, I feel like I'll just forget that I have it. So, I don't think meron sila yung alam mo yung parang wand ng mga security guard, hindi naman siguro, wala naman yata silang gano'n. So, baka I think I'll survive.
Okay.
Ako rin,
Mervin?
doon ako sa may,
Sa raid?
sa raid, kasi may magical object ako eh. Gusto magkaroon ng tunay na magical object sa
Yes.
kung ano man siya. Basta gusto kong magkaroon ng gano'n. So, tingnan natin kung ano man yun, yung object na yun. Siguro, ano ba gusto kong maging power? Actually, matagal ko na atang sagot na parang pagka meron akong magical power na makuha or object na makuha, gusto kong magkaroon ng power ng time, ganyan. So,
Yes.
parang feeling ko yun yung pinaka-powerful eh. Pero ang gagawin ko, mag-work lang ako. Tatapusin ko lahat para maabot ko yung mga deadlines. Tapos yun.
Actually, ako rin.
Continue ko na. Yun lang.
Yes.
Ganun lang gagawin ko.
Gusto ko yan.
Tapusin ko yung animation project ko ng 1 year, ganun. So, tapos na agad, ganun. So, masaya siya. Yun. So, ganun lang ako kasimpleng tao. Tapos kung may kalaban ka, stop mo yung time, tapos takbo ka, tapos yun. Akala niya na wala ka lang bigla. Yun. So, yun yung pinaka-powerful na yung time, gusto kong makuha ang power. Ganun. Bigla nag-iba yung question eh. No? Anyway.
Okay. So next question. Would you rather witness and therefore prove the existence of an urban legend or a rural myth?
Anong different? Kasi urban legend.
Yeah,
Urban legend sa city, no?
Parang mas fun yung rural myth. Doon na lang ako. Oo. Baka may mamit akong diwata sa bundok. Mga ganon. Yeah. Parang mas fun.
Ako, gusto ko ng... Well, since ayokong muna silang bahay, urban legend. Urban legend. So, ayan. Kung gusto kong ma-prove, yan. Gusto ko na,
at least nasa Paranaque ka lang, no?
Oo, dito lang. Wag mo na ako pahirapan.
Wag nang lumayo.
Oo.
Niisip ko, bakit ang scary nun?
Okay lang, para mapatunayan na natin once and for all. Gusto kong makakita talaga eh. At wala, ayaw nila eh. So, yun, tingnan natin. Yun.
Okay, so next, would you rather be a god or a mortal?
Di ba pwedeng in between? Like a mortal pa rin, pero mahaba yung mahaba yung life
Mahaba
and with
yung...
more vitality.
So parang half.
Yeah. Demigod maybe.
Yes.
God. Ako gusto ko ng God.
Yes.
Yes. Ambitions. Okay, so top tips naman tayo. What is your top tip for anyone starting a large project like writing a comic or writing a story?
It can be overwhelming sa simula, but just start it. Honestly.
Yes.
Sa akin kasi personally, parang mas matagal pa yung time na ginugugol ko, just feeling anxious about it. Parang, has to be perfect from the beginning. Pero top tip, just begin. Just begin.
Yes, so mahirap yun nga, mahirap magsimula sa blank na paper, pero yun nga, kailangan mo mag-start kasi pagka nag-start ka na, meron ka nang i-edit. So parang pagka yun yung feeling ko pinaka pagka may basta meron kang i-edit, yun yung doon mo maaayos yung yung story mo kasi doon mo makikita ko ano yung pwedeng pang i-improve. So, yun, mag-start ka lang. Pero before ka mag-start siguro, parang mas maganda siguro mag-take ka muna din ng mga iba-ibang mga literature, kahit movies, ganyan. Parang i-broaden mo muna yung knowledge tsaka horizons kasi hindi parang kailangan pag magsusulat ka parang buo yung mundo mo, hindi yan parang sobrang narrow lang yung gagawin mong perspective kasi parang hindi siya magmumukhang realistic ganyan. So kumbaga parang mag-research ganyan, magbasa kahit na specific sa mga topic mo, magbasa ganun. Yun yung pinakaunang feeling kong pwede mong gawin. Pero pagka meron ka ng konting idea tapos hindi ko gusto mo na magsimula, ayun, wag saka mag-start. Pero yun, i-broaden mo muna yung yung mga binabasa mo mga bagay-bagay tsaka kahit pinapanood yan. So, yun lang.
Alright. And your top tip for collaborating with writers and artists?
Okay, hindi lang ikaw ang star. Yun ang top tip ko.
Tama.
So, hindi dapat masyadong mahigpit yung hawak sa sariling storya. Even if you're not collaborating with anyone, whatever you write, you'll always have the reader as your collaborator anyway. So it's always good to have an open mind and to be open to other people's ideas and opinions, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Sa akin naman, mahirap mag-collab kasi ang daming parang may mga iba-ibang personalities din yung mga artists at saka yung mga writers. So siguro parang alamin mo muna din kung ano yung kung sino yung kakolab mo kasi feeling ko down the line magkakaroon kayo ng problema sa kapag kunyari essentially
kailangan compatible kayo creatively.
Oo.
100%. Okay. And for self-publishing or your work out there, what is your top tip?
Sige, Eliza.
Ikaw, Mervins.
Sige. Self-publishing. Madali na kasi mag-introduce ng sarili ngayon bilang artist or writer kasi may social media. Pwede mong i-post. Ganun ako nagsimula. Yung tabi po, nagsimula siya ng webcomic. So, kung gusto mo lang na i-test yung work mo kung magugustuhan ba ng maraming tao, madali naman siya malaman. So, feeling ko, wala namang problema kung mag-share ka. Lalo na ngayon na parang pwede naman talagang i-share yung mga bagay-bagay. Tapos kapag meron ka ng kunyari, magkaroon ka ng print version, pagka maganda naman yung gawa mo at nagustuhan talaga ng mga tao, bibili talaga sila kasi gusto nilang mag-support sa'yo at gusto nilang makagawa ka pa ng marami. So, wag kang matakot na mag-share kasi yun nga, kasi ginagawa mo naman to para mabasa din ng mga ibang tao eh. So, yun siguro yung share, yung ano ko, yung aking tip. Wag mo na mag-isip ng pera, talagang gawin mo muna yung bagay na gusto mong gawin or gusto mong basahin din. So para pag nakita ng mga tao yun at maramdaman nila yun sa gawa mo, mag-follow naman din yung support ng mga readers sa'yo tsaka ng mga fans ganyan. So yun siya. Feeling ko yun yung tip ko.
Yeah, iniisip ko lang din, I mean, we all write for ourselves. Sometimes you write something and never have it published, it will never see the light of day, that sort of thing. But when you decide to show it to the rest of the world, nandun din yung responsibility, I guess. Because once you send it out to the world, it will be of the world. So think about if your story will it do harm? Will it just add to the noise? That sort of
Yun.
thing. So something, yeah. So isipin mo rin yung responsibility mo as a writer, I guess.
Tama.
All right. And now, for the fully booked signature question, do you judge a book by its cover?
I'd say I do, I guess. Yes.
Yes.
Merv.
Sanagot ko na to before.
Lalo na sa Mervin bilang artist.
Yes.
Yes. Kung actual book, yes. Pero yung kasabihan na don't
judge a
yung sa
book.
tao syempre hindi pero syempre designer pagka feeling ko kasi yung mga book cover parang siya yung unang marketing ng book kasi siya yung harap niya. So yes, I definitely judge a book by its cover. Tapos pag nagandahan ako, bibili ko na.
So madali ka mabudol sa ganyan. Okay.
Yes. Lagi akong bibili sa fully book.
But I have to say though, may mga magaganda naman kasing books na hindi lang magaling siguro yung designer na humawak. So
Yes.
yeah,
So
I don't judge a book by its
don't judge
cover,
a book
pero
by-
yun lang.
kayo don't, pero kami yes. Joke lang. Pero pag-judge mo naman pag nakita mo naman parang maganda naman to kahit pangit yung cover. So kasama naman yun sa pag-judge. So judge ka din.
Okay. Thank you for the both of you for your wonderful answers to these questions. Asaya nyo kasama.
Yay!
Okay, thank you Eliza, Mervin, and Vida for that fruitful and
Salamat.
fascinating discussion. Yeah, so before we end, would you guys like to plug anything or promote anything?
Ano ba?
Well,
Sige,
ito,
yung sa akin.
ito mo.
Sige. Ayan na. Oo. Bili kayo na After Lambana soon or mag-pre-order kayo sa Fully Book. Or available sa website ng Fully Book yata ngayon. Yung After Lambana pre-orders. Yan. Tsaka yung Wounded Little Gods din, ano? Tama ba?
Yes. So, I guess, in terms of updates, just follow, or you can visit elizavictoria.com or follow me on social media. Whenever there's something new, I post about it naman. So, I'll keep you updated.
Okay, Vida.
Okay, so I have a short story collection coming later this year from Ateneo Press, but I can't talk too much about it yet kasi hindi pa na-sign yung MOA. That said, I have published my own short story collection. You can buy this on Gumroad. You can also message me if you would like a hard copy, and they're super limited. It's also illustrated. The two of you can judge the cover. I will tell you that
Ganda. Oo. Ako magaganda.
Actually, ako nag-drawing nun.
Seryoso?
Yes,
Ganda.
ako nag-drawing ng cover. Anyway,
Nice.
yes, you can buy this on Gumroad. So, that's it. And you can follow me on Twitter, and my website is vidacruz.org.
Okay, thank you again everyone for joining today. And then we hope everyone enjoyed and got excited for their upcoming books. So for those who want to immerse themselves in the world of magic and mythology, After Lambana and Wounded Little Gods are available at www.fullybookedonline.com. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Stay safe and keep on